Kamen Rider Saber came around at an unfortunate time in the world. COVID-19 was still in full effect around the world and had a huge impact on the most recent show at the time, Kamen Rider 01, even having to scrap big series plans to have 45 episodes instead of 50. So obviously, Kamen Rider Saber was going to be affected by this pandemic as well. And it was really apparent, and I didn't realize how restricted they were until they finally had a scene in a public place in episode 24. So because they had so many restrictions for filming, they just decided, screw characters. We're just going to use as many action scenes as we can and drag a plot point until it's poorly resolved. Sound familiar? Now we're kind of getting into spoiler territory, so let's just jump right into Kamen Rider Saber. Now, before I start with episode 1, I will mention something that a few of you probably want me to bring up. Around episode 40 of Kamen Rider 01, they had released a Kamen Rider Saber prologue only released in China. And since it was only released in China, no one, at least for what I've seen, has ripped it online, so I have not seen it. This is Tassel. I don't like Tassel. Moving on. Okay, there's technically more to him than just that. Tassel is supposed to be the narrator for the series, but he actually, for some reason, ends up being a major part of the plot later on. I'll barely talk about him after this in part 1, but in later parts expect him to be brought up again. We get introduced to our main character, Toma Kamiyama, who owns a bookstore known as Fantastic Bookstore Kamiyama. He has a dream about a battle 15 years ago and being given a book known as Brave Dragon, which he has in real life. His editor, Mei Sudo, tries to get him to work on his manuscript before the deadline, but he just wants to read with the children who visit the store. The evil Megid, consisting of Legiel, Zeus, and Storius, and also their own Dark Kamen Rider named Caliber, are planning to attack Earth, awakening a monster known as the Megid. The Megid cuts out a book-sized shape in the Earth and brings it to the mysterious Wonderworld, with Toma, Mei, and one of the kids Toma befriended trapped there. Toma, promising to save everyone, is given the Seiken Sword Driver and Kanken Rekka, which he can use with his Brave Dragon book to become Kamen Rider Saber. And here's where I come in. How in the world did Toma know how to use the Sword Driver? He has literally never seen it until now and uses it with no problem? Well, anyways, with the power of CGI, Toma defeats the Megid. At the end of the episode, Toma and Mei are talking about his transformation to Kamen Rider Saber, when a man riding a CGI lion walks into the bookstore. So that was episode 1. Aside from that nitpick about the sword driver, I really enjoyed this episode. No, really, for as much as I dislike this show, its beginning few episodes are actually pretty decent. And despite their limitations, they were still able to make an enjoyable and fulfilling story. Which makes it even more irritating when all these writers had written really good episodes at the beginning, only to write some of my least favorite writer episodes of all time. Don't worry, we'll get to that eventually. I like the idea of Toma being an author, and I think this is actually a first for Kamen Rider. I also like the idea of an author trying to fit in with a bunch of trained swordsmen and watch them slowly take him seriously, only for that to be ruined by the next arc, but we'll get into that at the very end. Don't worry about that. It did kind of suck that the final fight was just CGI, but the rest of the fights were cool enough, so it makes up for that. Alright, let's move on to the rest of the show, and be prepared for a lot of pauses. The man from the end of the last episode is Rintaro Shindo, the swordsman of water of the Sword of Logos. He tries to get Toma to hand over his Wonder Ride book because of the danger it would put him in, but Toma decides to keep it and save the planet. So, with no other choice, Rintaro brings Toma to the northern base of the Sword of Logos, where he meets Sophia, the keeper of the northern base, who I will also barely bring up in this part. Toma and Rintaro go to fight the Megid, revealing that Rintaro can transform into his own Kamen Rider, Blades. There's not much else of note here other than that Toma gets his bike for the season, Diago Speedy, which, like most other recent rider bikes, is barely used. This is also the start of Toma getting his overabundance of new forms, most of which I will not be bringing up because they're not important to the story at all. But here, this shows that, like O's, riders who use the sword driver can mix and match their Wonder Ride books to make different combinations. But unlike O's, you don't need to have 3 books in it at all time. We also get another cliffhanger at the end of this episode with another person mysteriously appearing in the bookstore who somehow knows Toma. This is Kento Fukumiya, who was Toma's childhood friend and seems to know some of his past that Toma himself even doesn't know. But this episode isn't about Kento, it's about this guy, Kamen Rider Buster, the swordsman of land, who saves Toma and Rintaro from the revived Megid from episode 1. This is Ogami Ryo, who is the father to Sora Ogami, and often brings his child into battle, which Rintaro isn't the fondest of. He immediately isn't a fan of Toma, because he's an author, but later respects him when he saves Sora from a Megid. This episode is also where we get the introduction to Lion Fantasista, Rentero's two-book combo. I know this seems really random, but this will be important later on. Also, in this episode, we get the introduction of Disaster, a villain who was a part of the battle 15 years ago and killed several of the previous swordsmen. We also get shown that using 3 books at once in the Sword Driver is really powerful, with Toma using Dragon, Hedgehog, and Peter, which they act like it's a big deal, but like a lot of things in the show, it's barely ever used. After the battle, Toma is extremely exhausted from the combo, only for Toma and Rintaro to be visited by Caliber, and saved by a new Kamen Rider, Espada, the Swordsman of Thunder. Kento is Kamen Rider Espada, although they don't fully reveal it was him until later on in the episode. The beginning of episode 5 is where we get our full introduction to Daishinji Tetsuo, the swordsmith for the group. Kento also seems to be troubled about something. Kento talks to Ogami about the fact that Caliber is really Kento's father, which he hides from Toma because... Why does he hide from Toma? Toma and Kento find an attacking Megid and both transform. Kento gets distracted by Caliber and is almost killed until Ogami saves him. He then tells Ogami that he won't tell Toma about Caliber because he wants to protect him? Kento? What harm would be caused by you just telling Toma that Caliber is your father? And honestly, the reveal of who Caliber actually is later on in the show had a bigger impact on Toma than if Kento had just told him. Toma and Kento return to the battle, and we get the first appearance of Dragon Eagle, Toma's 2 Rekka book combo, using the Storm Eagle book Ogami got from Disaster. The episode ends with Rintaro and Mei finding Zeus and Disaster. In the next episode, we get introduced to Ren Akimichi, the Swordsman of Wind, Kamen Rider Kenzan. Ren immediately becomes a rival to Toma, and I say rival in quotes because it's not really a rivalry. Remember when you were like 6 or something and you would think you were so cool because you were acting all tough in front of the big kids? Yeah, that's pretty much Ren's relationship to Toma in this arc. Toma goes into battle against his ass but gets his sword driver sealed, meaning he can't transform. Rintaro starts his fight with Zeus, revealing that he was the one who killed Rintaro's master, the previous Kamen Rider Blades. Although he stands no chance against the General Megid, and can just lay on the ground, powerless to fight, watching Zeus walk away. Toma and Daishinji go looking for how to get to Avalon, which is the only place he can fix his sword. Toma finds a forbidden book where he finds the answer. At the same time, Ren defeats Disaster. Wow, Disaster just kind of came and left without doing much. Rintaro comes back to the northern base, grabs the Tenku no Pegasus book, and goes into the training room. Toma and Kento enter Avalon when they connect 13 books, even though they only have 8 with them. Well, 10 if you count something that happened in a couple episodes, but it's still not 13. If you added Rintaro's 3 books, that makes 13, but again, he's in the training room using them. So, how would they be able to summon them? Oh wait, they're using toy-exclusive books that have never been seen in the show before or after. Okay, anyways. Caliber also enters Avalon using 13 Ultra Ride books. Rintaro tries using all 3 books countless times, but he doesn't have the power to do so. Every time he tries, he just ends up on the floor. Back in Avalon, Caliber shows up to fight Toma and Kento. Toma and Caliber's 2 dragons come together to form an entrance. Toma runs in as Kento stays back to fight Caliber. Ogami and Ren have been fighting Legiel, Zeus, and Omegid when Mei almost gets attacked, only to be saved at the last minute by Rintaro. After finally mastering his 3 books, he transforms into a fantastic lion. Back with Toma, he finds a mysterious man who gives him the King of Arthur Wonder Ride book, where he says he needs to complete a trial to show his worthiness. He uses the book to transform into Dragon Arthur, gets handed a blank book, and gets sent back to Kento and Caliber. Kento's been defeated and can barely stand up. Everyone returns to the northern base, including Mei now. Toma seems to be troubled by the King of Arthur book, but he says it's nothing. Oh hey, look, there's Greedon and Bravo from Gaim to promote their Toy Tokusatsu fan club special. The group goes to fight Caliber and the Megid from before, but Toma starts fighting out of control. He almost gets turned into stone by the Megid until Ogami takes the attack for him. Toma, thinking that this was his fault, runs off as the rest talk about it, how Toma was troubled by not being able to reach the full potential of King of Arthur. A talk with Sora gets Toma back to normal, and he thinks up a plan which is basically just, let's try winning. Toma uses his King of Arthur mech, which is never seen after this episode by the way, to defeat the Megid. Oh, also, Toma is the sword for the Arthur mech, and that is awesome. Ogami is turned back to normal, and once again the day is saved. And now Greedon and Bravo run off to star in their special. Later, Ogami talks to Daishinji about helping in the fight as he prepares his own Seiken. Alright, so this is where I paused. These were the first 8 episodes of Kamen Saber. Yeah, I cut out so much from these episodes because, well, nothing really happens in them. Pretty much half of every episode is just fighting. Also, something I forgot to mention earlier, Saber is often compared to Sentai due to its giant cast of colorful writers, and of course, the fact that the show has an ending theme. Yes, the first Kamen show since Hibiki to have an ending theme, and obviously it's to pad more time, so they don't have to film very many scenes. And they're impressive fights, but they're really only there to pad out time, and here's another reason why I cut out a lot. Toma's lost memories. A plot point so stupid that they just got tired of trying to drag it out for so long that they just drop it in the next few episodes and just have Toma instantly remember everything about his past. Which is why I haven't been listening any of the hints, because they all get revealed really quickly. Don't get me wrong, these first 8 episodes are really good, and I feel they did the best they could. But don't expect getting a whole lot of story in the beginning of Saber. And this is where I would say the good part of Saber comes to an end, and we're finally getting into what I would say is honestly either pretty bad or at the very least mediocre. Like I said at the beginning, they were really restricted in what they could do with Saber, and along with cramming in as many fight scenes as possible came bringing out a ridiculous amount of new toys. As you can see, we already got 6 riders in the first 8 episodes that each have a different transformation weapon, and it's about $30 to $60 per henshin device, so that means you're already spending $180 plus on this stuff. Not to mention all the extra Wonder Ride books up to this point: Storm Eagle, Peter Fantasista, Tenku no Pegasus, Needle Hedgehog, Jack and Toto Momonoki, Kobota-san Kyodai, and King of Arthur. All the toy-exclusive Wonder Ride books, and all the future riders in Wonder Ride books. And yes, there are going to be plenty of new riders in the future that each have their own transformation weapons. Now you may be thinking, well, Gaim had a lot of riders, so why do you really like Gaim and not Saber? Well, for one, Gaim actually had a story, but secondly, there were only 2 main drivers in Gaim, the Sengoku driver and the Genesis driver. All the riders just had different faceplates to go on the driver to give it different sounds, which are a lot less expensive than an entire new driver. And if you couldn't tell, yes, Daishinji also becomes a rider, and I think that's a good segue into talking about episode 9. Caliber and Stories have begun a ceremony that combines Caliber's Jaku Dragon book with 3 Ultra Ride books and some of the Sword of Logos' Wonder Ride books to give Caliber even more power than King of Arthur. Toma, Rintaro, and Kento go to fight the Megid that Story is sent out when Caliber arrives to fight as well. As Sophia and May watch the battle, a mysterious person walks into the northern base to be mysterious and then walk off. And now I will pretty much never mention her until the end, because for the rest of the first arc, she just serves as the person who moves the plot forward behind the scenes. Oh, and this is the first instance of Caliber saying he's looking for the eternal truth. And honestly, if Caliber had just told them what was going on instead of attacking them whenever they ask for answers, considering what happens later on, I'm pretty sure at least Toma would understand him and try to help, being the good-hearted person he is. But we'll get to that later. Because the 3 riders are getting their butts kicked by Caliber, Daishinji comes in to transform into Kamen Rider Slash, the Swordsman of Sound. But not before Caliber can take the Needle Hedgehog and Tenku no Pegasus Wonder Ride books. Oh, that suit. Okay, I think it's time to take a break from the show now to talk about the suits. I like most of these suits, with Kenzan being my personal favorite from the show. Slash, though, is one I really dislike. It's just got too much going for it, and it's not the most pleasant to look at. And this is, of course, just padding, so I don't have to talk about the most frustrating scene in this episode. Worse than every problem I had in the first 8 episodes, and yet this isn't even the worst thing to come out of this arc. Caliber drops the Sayu Journey Wonder Eye book, which just so happens to be a Saber book, and yes, there is a reason for this, but it's still stupid that he gets it this way. And because he has all 3 books, he uses the 3 with absolutely no problem whatsoever. What? You spend an entire episode of Rintaro putting himself through so much pain just so he could master his 3-book combo and save the day. Toma, who mind you has had even less training than Rintaro at the beginning, let alone all the training he's done since then to master Fantastic Lion, transforms into his 3-book combo Crimson Dragon with no difficulty. And yes, later on in the show it is stated that Toma is the Chosen One, but that's an awful way to explain things, because you can just make the main character be able to do anything the plot needs him to do because he's the Chosen One. That is, By far, the laziest way of explaining a power-up, minus one occasion that is even stupider than this, that is from the same show, by the way, and I wouldn't even mind this as much as I do if this was a one-time thing, but it's not. The theme of these next 8 episodes is introducing new power-ups for no good explanation. Ugh, I can't get over how stupid this is. Okay, moving on. Kento was given the Tri-Cerberus Wonder Ride book by, well, the plot, let's be honest. The plot lady tries to get Kento to join the southern base of the Sword of Logos, which does cleverly foreshadow something coming up. Toma and Rintaro finally speak up to Kento about him doing literally nothing for the past few episodes other than stand around and look upset. Kento says now that he has the comfort of all his friends with him, he no longer feels the need to defeat Caliber. Until he completely forgets this later on in the exact same episode. The three head back to battle against the Megid, who can now power up. Why? He can, because, hey look, fighting. Daishinji comes to fight the Megid as the three go for Caliber. They get their books back and they all transform into their 3-book combos, including Kento into Golden Alangina. Kento getting his combo this easily is still kind of stupid, but it makes a lot more sense than Toma. Because Kento has been a writer longer than Toma. Sure, we don't know how long he's been training for the Sword of Logos, but considering he's been preparing to avenge his father's betrayal since he was a kid, we could probably assume that it's been a while. And honestly, he probably trained harder than Rintaro because he had bigger reasons to fight for. Once Caliber has absorbed enough power from the 3 riders for the ceremony, Storius fires a blast on all the riders, knocking them all down, including Caliber, revealing that he is Kamito Daichi, the previous Kamen Rider Saber. Kento tries to get answers out of him, but considering Kamijo doesn't have the best track record of answering their questions, he just goes in for an attack, only to instantly regret doing it. With the ceremony complete, Kamijo now has access to the Jiao Dragon Book, a Wonder Ride book bigger than any other they have. Now this is where Kamen Rider Saber's movie, The Phoenix Swordsman in the Book of Ruin, takes place. You may be wondering, why is this Saber's movie and why does it take place here instead of at the end of the show? Well, remember how I said COVID affected 01? Well, 01's movie was supposed to come out in July, around the time Mother Rider movies did, alongside Mashin Sentai Karameter's movie, which was airing alongside 01 at the time. Unfortunately, 01's movie got pushed back to December, and Karameter's movie wasn't ready in time for it. So instead, they decided to make a movie for Saber to go along with it. And really, it's like most of what we covered here. Just basically one big fight scene and barely any plot. So why am I mentioning this? Well, later on the show, they confirm that this movie is indeed canon, and is a mandatory watch to understand later plot points that, like a lot of stuff in the show, goes nowhere and feels like a second thought just to be something to tie in with the movie around the time it was released digitally. So, the story of this movie is that Bach, the immortal swordsman, who can also transform into Kamen Rider Falchion, has been unsealed, and has unleashed the titular Book of Ruin, which will eventually destroy everything on Earth, because, I don't know, they needed something for the good guys to do in this movie. Our heroes go to fight Bach, and basically just fight until Toma, using the power of being the main character, somehow gets access to his mandatory movie form, Emotional Dragon. Bach gets resealed, and I bet we'll never see him again. Now here's where I will say, if you haven't seen the first 16 episodes, I recommend you watch them and come back, because this is where this big story parts take place. Okay? Good. Back to actually important stuff. Toma talks to Kento about how they dropped his missing memories subplot really quickly, and wonders where they should go from here. Kento thinks maybe they should end the him finding out what happened to his father subplot by provoking the man who can kick the butts of all 3 riders at once. Rintaro, on the other hand, doesn't think Kento putting himself in obvious danger is a good idea, and tells him to hand over his sword. Rintaro, do you know how rare it is for Kento to actually do something in an episode? Why don't you just let Kento be a part of the plot and... Oh, right, this is Kento. Bunch of Megid, including Disaster, are found around the city, so Toma, Ogami, and Ren go to fight them. Rintaro tries to talk some sense into Kento, where he reveals that he was an orphan taken in by the Sword of Logos, which shows why he was so emotionally affected when he found out that Zuos killed his master. He was the closest person he ever had to a father. The plot lady tells Kento where Kamijo is, as Sophia tries to talk to him. Kento and Rintaro find them, and Kento thinks the two are conspiring together against Kento and his father. Kento, this is why we can't have you involved in the plot, because you don't think before you do something. There's literally a million other things that could be going on, and that's the first thing that comes to your mind? You didn't think that she was being kidnapped or he was gonna kill her, or heck, even what actually happened and her just wanting to know what happened to him like everyone else. Kento Fukumiya, ruining Saber episode since October 4th, 2020. Kento clearly hasn't learned from past experiences and just straight up attacks Kamijo, and it goes about as well as you think. It doesn't help that he uses a new Zhao Dragon Wonder Eye book to become, well, Zhao Dragon. Ew, are all the suits just gonna look like garbage? Oh. Well, Kento just gets his butt kicked even more now because he didn't learn his lesson a minute ago. Oh, and Sophia's been kidnapped. I bet Kento will just think she went to go make a Megid or something. Toma and Ren defeat their Megid, but doing that leaves a green and red pillar of light. Rintaro ends up taking a fatal blow from the idiotic Kento, saying that they're more than just teammates, they're family. Well, Rintaro's dead. Oh, wait, no he's not. Mei gets mad at Kento for running off without telling... Doorbell. Mei gets mad at Kento for running off without telling them why, and I keep forgetting that Kento hasn't told Toma and Mei about his father yet, because it's so stupid that he hasn't. Even if you don't want to tell them outright that your father used to be Caliber, just say that Kamijo knows what happened to your father and you want to know. It's not that hard, Kento. They talk about how the Megid are obviously a trap, but they have to be defeated anyways to save all the people affected. Now, instead of going along with Ren like he was told to, Kento goes to fight Kamijo again. Motorcycle. Fun. Now, instead of going along with Ren like he was told to, Kento goes to fight Kamijo again, because he hasn't learned yet that fighting him without backup will end with him injured. Last time it even got Rintaro injured because of your stupidity, and you decide to fight him again? Why? He says it's because it's the right thing to do, but it really isn't. The right thing to do is to go help defeat the Megid with the others and wait for everyone to help fight against him. We've already established many times that one person fighting Kamijo isn't enough. Kento says he knows what Caliber's plan is, but then why didn't you tell them that instead of standing there saying nothing while everyone was discussing battle strategies a few minutes ago? That might have helped a little bit for them to know what their plan is. But no, because why would Kento ever come up with a good idea? I mean, he has gone off to fight Kamijo on his own like 3 times now with the same result every time. Rintaro goes to take Toma's place so he can go help the idiot trying to fight Kamijo. Although this doesn't do much because Kento has already been defeated by Kamijo, as 3 more pillars have been made by the time he gets there. Well, Kento's dead. Oh, wait, no he's not. Wait, is that the guy from Avalon with Tassel watching Toma cry over an almost lifeless Kento? They figure out that there's only 1 pillar left, so it can only be made up by either Kento's sword or Kamijo's sword. The group goes to stop Kamijo and... Wait, hold up. When did they get 2 blank Wonder Eye books? Did I miss something? Now, you'd think Kento has learned his lesson about fighting Caliber after getting his butt kicked multiple times, almost getting Rintaro killed, and almost getting himself killed. Well, if you thought that, then you must not have been paying attention, because this is Kento we're talking about here. Of course he hasn't learned anything here. Yep, that seems about right. And what was even his goal of coming here? It looks like he was trying to defeat the Megid before Kamijo could, but if he killed it first, there would still be a 6th pillar. Did the director just forget the entire point of this episode, or did the writer just want to show us how dumb Kento is? Kento says there was no other choice, but of course there was, idiot. The same thing would have happened if you had just stayed behind, because 1, nothing changed apart from you getting even more injured, and 2, even if you had done what you planned to do, literally nothing would change. There would still be 6 pillars of light, and you would be in the exact same situation. Takara Fukuda, you really know how to make a story really confusing. Oh boy, here it comes. Everyone is unable to battle except Toma. Using Deus Ex Machina at its finest, the empty book comes flying at him and turns into Dragonic Knight, giving Toma yet another new power-up. Yeah, the guy from Avalon is seen saying that Toma has completed all his trials, but what trials has he completed? Literally all he's done is fight, and when he's not winning, he just tries winning and he wins. No challenges to overcome other than beating the enemy the same way he always has. Oh, and Kento's dead now. Wait, no, he's... Oh, wait, he's actually dead this time. I mean, yes, technically he's not dead, but we'll get into that in the next part. Our heroes leave with the door to the eternal truth still in the sky. And now we go from the tragic death of one of the main characters of the show to happy ending theme music with dancing. Yeah, it doesn't fit, does it? Oh boy, it's this episode now. I have been saving up a rant since I first watched this episode for this. Toma, Ogami, and Ren go to fight the General Megid and Kamijo, with Toma being given Kento's sword. Rintaro, oh boy, asked Daishinji for a new power-up using that second book that just came out of nowhere. Rintaro arrives with his new book, King Lion Daisenki, that he got by doing absolutely nothing, and uses it on his first try without any difficulty. What? I know I said Dragonic Knight was Deus Ex Machina at its finest, but this right here is just stupid. How in the world was the writer for this episode so lazy that he couldn't figure out a way for Rintaro to get a new power-up other than just practically being given one? Especially since we are currently 18 minutes into this episode. 18 minutes! Meaning the majority of this episode was fighting. They could have added so much more reason for Rintaro to get this new power-up, but they chose not to because, hey, look, fighting. You know, the first half of this arc had such a great way for them to gain power-ups. They would have to gain most of their books by defeating Megid, and even if they already had some at the northern base, they would have to train intensely to unlock that 3-book combo. And then they just threw that out the window and practically just handed Toma and Kento their 3-book combos without even needing to work for them. Then we get to Dragonic Knight, which, even though it technically had more of a reason to exist than Crimson Dragon when it did, it was still absolutely stupid how it just came out of nowhere and just saying he passed these off-screen trials. Now we have this, which is just the laziest and stupidest episode of Kamen Rider I have ever seen in my entire life. No. This is the laziest and stupidest episode of any TV show I have seen in my entire life. Even something that I think is boring and a waste of my time watching it, I can still see so much effort put into it. Even children's shows, though they're simplified so much to be understood by young children, have more effort put into them than this episode ever did. They have done so many awesome introductions to new forms for this franchise, like Zero 2, Deno Climax form, Double Cyclone Joker Extreme, O's Puto Tira combo, and so many more. And then we get to this, where the writer of this episode was so lazy that day, and he could have thought of some great reason for Rintaro to be getting a new book, but decided to make almost the entire episode just one long fight scene. Yes, they are impressive fights, but it doesn't make the episode enjoyable if I don't care about anything going on. Go into the villains more. I didn't even remember most of their names my first time watching this until around episode 25. Heck, give Saber some filler episodes to give the audience a break from all of the super dark story of Saber. There's a special episode that serves as a crossover with Zenkaiger, and it's so much more enjoyable than the majority of Saber, because it just decides to have fun with itself, and not make everything so serious. So many shows are better than Saber because they mix comedy and seriousness well, but Saber just feels like Zyuranger aside from what actually made Zyuranger semi-enjoyable, and that being the filler, where you can just sit back and enjoy what you're watching. It doesn't matter if it makes no sense, it doesn't matter to the actual story. And it would have been perfect for Saber. There were just so many missed opportunities with this show that it makes me so frustrated when I actually watch it. And now I'm getting a little off track, so let's get back to the episode. Fight, 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 more fighting, some more fighting, and fight. After all the fighting, Toma and Kamijo both fly up into the door of the Eternal Truth. Hey guys, look, more fighting. And guess what happens when Toma and Kamijo enter the Eternal Truth? They fight. Who would have guessed? Toma is killed by Caliber, but with the literal power of friendship, Toma returns. You know, this doesn't work as well as it did in Forze, because it doesn't have the emotional kick to it. In that, we had a character who at first hated Gentaro, then grew to actually become friends with him, and kill him willingly. Don't get me wrong, his arrival is still glorified Deus Ex Machina, but it works better there than here. Oh wait, Kamijo's finally explaining things. On the day of the battle 15 years ago, Kento's father attacked Kamijo. When Toma was targeted, he saved him, not knowing that Brave Dragon ended up in his hands. He realized that the Sword of Logos corrupted Kento's father, and he killed him, taking his sword to then find the traitor hidden in the Sword of Logos. This is actually a really good explanation for what happened to Kamijo and Kento's father. The only problem I have with it is why he didn't tell anyone about this when everyone was asking. Now my question is, why did he side with the people who were trying to destroy the Earth when he was just trying to find the traitor in the Sword of Logos? Toma and Kamijo are both knocked and transformed when Disaster appears and stabs Kamijo. With his final words, he tells Toma to find the traitor for him. Wait, how did Disaster get here in the first place? Oh, right, because the plot needed him to. Just as Toma is about to pick them up, Kamijo's sword and books disappear in the same smoke Sophia disappeared in. Oh hey, guys, look, more fighting. And then the villains retreat. So basically that fight was just a bad timeout because literally nothing of note happened other than Toma and Kamijo, which was about half of the episode, maybe even less. Toma returns and the door to the Eternal Truth closes. Now, you'd probably think this is where the first arc ends, but you'd be wrong because it actually ends with episode 16. The plot lady is talking to someone about Toma now being the key to finding the opposite to Calibur's Sword of Darkness, the Sword of Light. The group is all preparing for the new year, and you see, this is what I love about Saber. Just the show taking a break from its super important story to have fun with its characters. This is what I was talking about before with Saber needing more filler episodes. The show gets a whole lot better when they decide to balance these more. Sure, we still don't get any filler episodes in the future, but at least they're making more of an effort to comic relief moments other than, haha, look, May's hair looks funny, laugh now. They show that random people have been able to see the Wonderworld. The plot lady shows up in Toma's bookstore, finally revealing that her name is Reika Shindai, and has come to scout Toma into the southern base, just like with Kento. He refuses because he wants to continue fighting alongside his friends. Later that night, Toma is thinking about what Kamijo said to him, and that he wants to find out the truth. Except, unlike Kamijo, he's smart here, not wanting to just outright tell them that he doesn't trust the Sword of Logos and keep working with them until he can find the traitor. But saving the world comes first. Unfortunately, Reika does not take Toma's rejection well, and tells the other swordsmen that Toma has betrayed the Sword of Logos. Unfortunately for her, though, they're not idiots and doubt that. That is, until she brings up Kamijo and Kento's father, who were never thought to be traitors until they actually were, continuing the train of betrayal. This is actually a pretty good twist on things, setting up for the second arc. Where this episode gets stupid, though, is here. They confront Toma about this and just straight up accuse him without even asking questions first. I read on a Discord server when this episode first aired that someone said this episode felt like a badly written Toshiki Inoue episode, referencing the tendency he had with Fies where the characters would barely talk out their issues, something that was quickly fixed in the next series, Kamen Rider Blade. The other swordsmen barely give any time for Toma to explain himself. They just go straight to attacking him without giving Toma any time to even think about what's going on. And remember, they've been fighting alongside Toma for 4 months now, so I'm pretty sure they'd be a little more hesitant to trust Reika on this. I think the fact that Toma lasted this long without betraying them, and the fact that he was able to make completely new books from doing nothing twice, would make them consider whether or not Toma is really a traitor. And also, going back to Kamijo's stupidity, if he had just told them what happened before he killed Kento, they might be a little more likely to believe what he tells them. I mean, it is tough to trust someone who just killed a close friend. And yes, I get that they should be cautious about traitors, but this episode just makes them all look like jerks who start attacking you if you say anything close to the combination of words don't and trust. Fortunately for Toma, someone here actually has common sense and comes to help him, the guy from Avalon, named Yuri, who can become Kamen Rider Psycho, the Sword of Light. No, not swordsman. Sword. Yes, Yuri himself is the Sword of Light. I actually really like this idea because it's not really something they explore in Kamen Rider. They've really only done this once before with Kamen Rider Laser being a bike back in X8. Unfortunately, they don't really do much with this ability because this form basically becomes obsolete after episode 20, which is a theme I've noticed a lot with this show. And this still isn't over. Like a lot of other recent Kamen Rider series, Saber had Blu-ray exclusive specials that tie in loose ends from the plot. Basically, a lot of the stuff that didn't make sense in these 16 episodes are explained to make a whole lot more sense. I figured we should talk about it because, well, it's on the Blu-ray with these 16 episodes, so I might as well cover it, even though this could give away some potential spoilers, but to me, I just think of it as a teaser to what's coming in the second arc of the show. First off, this is Master Logos, the head of the Sword of Logos, and the one who has been giving the big orders behind the scenes. Master Logos, like Yuri, is one of the best parts of Saber because of how great his actor is. Master Logos is played by the same actor for Shinken Gold from Shinkenger, which I love because of the over-the-top acting his actor gives to the character. And the same applies here. But I'll get into my thoughts on Yuri and Master Logos next time, when we have more to discuss about them. Right now, let's get into the special. Master Logos meets the seven swordsmen, including the never-before-seen previous Espada and Genzan. Kento's father, who I'm just going to call Hayato now because he's a lot more prominent in this special, is troubled by the vision he sees in his sword, which is able to give vision of the future. It shows the world in ruin. 2 years later, Hayato and Kamijo are training and are shown to be good friends. Kamijo assures him that he's not alone, and then he has a vision of the flashback of Kamijo killing him we saw in episode 15. Hayato keeps getting visions of the world ending and goes crazy inside the northern base. He then gets a vision of Master Logos being the head of the attack. He confronts him, with Master Logos confirming that those are his future actions, and lies to Hayato about how his actions will save the world and his son. He sends him to target Luna, the girl Toma and Kento were with. I don't know if I've mentioned her name yet, because they only recently dropped her name, who is the key to unleashing his attack on the world. It's revealed that Hayato awakened the Megid 15 years ago and started the war. Kamijo confronts Hayato as the others fight off the Megid. Espada and Kenzan are killed, and they serve pretty much no purpose other than to just give Espada and Kenzan a previous member. Oh hey, there's that scene of Luna getting sucked into the portal that they play in almost every episode. Kamijo saves Toma when he gets in his way of the fight. He kills Hayato and picks up his sword, finding out the reason for his madness. He opens up a portal with Hayato's sword and sends the Sword of Fire through the darkness. He then swears to find the hidden traitor in the Sword of Logos by exploiting the Megid. 15 years later, Master Logos meets the new 5 swordsmen we're used to: Rintaro, Kento, Ren, Ogami, and Daishinji. Master Logos leaves Reika in charge of looking over the northern base swordsmen. Kamijo sees that the boy he saved has now become Saber and doesn't want him involved in the fight, wanting him to have a normal life, which is why he kept asking for his sword and books. Reika tells Master Logos that Toma has mastered the powers of King of Arthur, and he tells her to bring him Sophia. But guys, guess what? Kento's not dead. Yeah, you guys probably already knew that. Kamijo just sealed him into the darkness of his sword because of Hayato's wish of protecting Kento. After Kamijo died, Reika brought Master Logos the Sword of Darkness, where he calls her Sabala, and orders her to collect all the swords to the southern base. At the end of the special, the Sword of Darkness is shown with another caliber appearing from it. This special is really only here to give more backstory for the battle 15 years ago, and to fill in the gaps left in the first 16 episodes. Although it does have some good moments, like when Ogami asks Hayato what it's like having a kid, and the previous Blades replies with how he's been training Rintaro. It's little things like this that make me appreciate the special. And with that, we have now finally finished the first 16 episodes of Kamen Rider Saber. What did I think of this show? Well, I already said a lot of my thoughts during the synopsis, but I'll go a little more in depth here. The first 8 episodes are done extremely well and start up some really interesting plot points. It also has 2 of my favorite story arcs in the entire show, those being the introduction to Ogami and the King of Arthur 2-parter. Where the show really falls flat, though, is the rest of the first arc. It had so much wasted potential. They had so many good ideas for this show, and they just had to scrap them all in 7 episodes when they realized they wanted a completely different story for the second arc. I've already talked about my hate for the introduction to Crimson Dragon and King Lion Daisenki, and I get that they were limited by what they could film, but this was airing at the same time as Kira Major, which at the time was doing some really cool things with their story, because they actually had filler in between important episodes. It didn't feel too story-heavy, or like they barely had any story in mind, which is a worry I do have for Zenkaiger. It found a nice balance between the two, and it made the show really enjoyable. I cannot say the same, though, for Saber. Kira Major showed that you can have a good story under these restrictions, other than fighting, more fighting, and hey look, more fighting. Saber just feels lazy. Zenkaiger solved this problem really easily. They had one human character, and the rest of them were robots, so you could have more untransformed interactions with the characters. Saber just made this even harder on themselves by introducing so many different characters to the mix, and a lot of them just got left behind. But to sum up the first arc of Kamen Rider Saber in 2 words, it would be wasted potential. It had a lot going for it, but they had to scrap a lot by the end. Now with that being said, I'll see you guys next time for, I guess, whatever video I'm doing then. And now I'm going back to Hunter x Hunter, because that's a lot better than this. So if you guys have gotten to this part in the video, I just want to say thank you for watching it, and actually watching it to the end. If you want, you can join the Discord server in the description, and you can also join my Patreon, which is also in the description, where you can get videos early and even get special videos just for patrons. Oh, and if we get to $50 a month, I will do a stream where I watch an entire Toku show of your guys' choice. So if you're interested in that, you can go support me on Patreon, and we can hopefully reach that goal soon, and we can do that live stream. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.